The criminal cases are a constant reminder of the sights and sounds impossible to forget. A night when people ran from the flames and held on to faith and family. The moonlight's surrender to daylight lets Christina Hunter run while the crickets roar.
For me, running has always been a thankful exercise.
It's her time to re-energize and reflect on a year that took an unexpected twist.
A lot of people thought an airplane had crashed into the neighborhood.
Christina and her family have lived in Richmond Hill for 4 years. Their house was one of 125 homes in the neighborhood that stood before 11:11 p.m. on November the 10th, 2012. On that night, few knew the house at 8349 Fieldfair Way was filling up with gas. Next door, at 8343 Fieldfair, the Olvey family was hanging out in the living room area. Glenn Olvey did not umpire softball as usual that day and spent the night with his wife and 2 teenage daughters. Across the street, at 8330, 2 cakes were cooling off for a church celebration the next day. Michelle Smith plays piano at worship service and planned on watching some Saturday Night Live. But at 8336 Fieldfair, something strange was happening in Mavis Byers' home. She began videotaping her usually tame poodle. Snuggles was jumping on the furniture and running to their front door. Mavis now thinks her dog could smell the gas that was building up across the street. Down the street at 3953 Towhees Drive, Doug Aldridge had just finished watching the Notre Dame game. At 4012 Armada Drive, it was time to go to bed. Ben and Leslie Melvin had spent most of the evening at a fundraising gala at the Armory in Franklin. Next door at 4018 Armada Drive is where Christina lives with her husband Nick and their 2 children Molly and Jackson. They were not home at 11:11. That's when 8349 Fieldfair Way shattered into pieces. It was the unthinkable.
We've got 1 house down. We have 2 others severely damaged and possibly 2 others minor.
Christina and her family were camping in Johnson County. Once they heard what was unfolding in their neighborhood, they turned to their smartphones to pull up their security cameras.
We could see the smoke, we could see, we could hear people, and then all of a sudden it went dark.
They'd installed cameras months earlier due to an attempted robbery. So for the first time, we now see and hear the boom and flash of light that forced many people out of their homes. The shockwave burst their front door open and rattled their entire house. Another camera in the kitchen captured this. In the aftermath, $74,000 in structural damage.
For me, it was a holy cow moment. It was an eye-opener.
Their surveillance system would also record their neighbors, who instead of just running away, stopped to check in on their well-being.
Hello? Anybody home? Anybody home? Please tell me if you're home. Hello?
That was something.
That neighbor, Ben Melvin, before fleeing from the flames visible from his home's picture window, Ben ran to the Hunter's home.
I just, made sure that my family was okay, and I knew that obviously someone needed help.
Hello?
I don't even know why I did it. I just did.
I can say that we are blessed. Not only because we got to see that kind of spirit and that kind of courage, but we're blessed because through this we've gotten to know even more of our neighbors that go to and rush in and don't run away.
Christina's route, her routine, provide daily reminders, though it's never easy to pass the property where her neighbors died.
We mourn. We mourn for their families. We mourn for, that's a loss, an unimaginable loss.
So she runs, not from what happened, but to what lies beyond the horizon. A tighter-knit neighborhood is what you'll find 1 year later, but not everyone was able to return home.
In a rental for so long.
Almost a year.
Ryan and Sabrina Konecki are tired of making this drive.
I'm ready. I'm just ready to be home.
They knew where they were going to live after their wedding. Friends and family rejoiced in a picture-perfect union in June 2002, the same year they built their home in Richmond Hill. So many high points, rivaled by this low point.
I'm with IMPD. They're trying to evacuate the block around you.
Their home sat behind the one blamed for the explosion. This is what the Koneckis and their 2 young children left behind.
Really just made you thankful and appreciative of the family that you have.
The couple let us see why it's so frustrating to stop by their new home under construction. It stands on the same plot of land as the one that had to be demolished.
Even when this was just dirt, it was home. Even when there's no building on it, it was home to us.
1 month before they were to move back in, their builder stopped building. The flooring is incomplete, and there are no plumbing fixtures, and the woodwork isn't finished. It's not ready for the family of 4.
We've had a lot of hope for a little while because we had that faith, and so we know it's going to get done.
Imagining that moment comes in the little things, like the new door handle, destined for their front door.
You know, what it symbolizes, and just being able to walk in here and, you know, not have to drive by and you know, daydream about what it's going to be like, but just walk in and, like I said, see the kids playing on the floor.
Until that day, the drive between their rental and home will be a way of life.
And we're envisioning the future, and I think that's what keeps us going.
The Koneckis hired a lawyer to get the issue resolved. Glenn Olvey is talking for the first time about his family's ordeal, their healing, and their future. Glenn Olvey knows the ins and outs of this game.
Ball. When you walk through the gates, everything that's on the outside doesn't matter.
Glenn usually umps 120 games a year. By choice, he'll barely crack half that amount this season. That's because the noise is at times unnerving. He brings to this field the scars from the field where his house once stood.
Sirens. Anytime a siren goes off, everybody, you can just see everybody in our house just flinch. Every time that the HVAC system kicked on, you hear this thump. A couple of times I caught myself crawling under the desk. It just feels like it, you know, it's right to tell what we went through. Because, I mean, this is it. This is what we've got left here.
This is what the Olveys survived. They live right next door to the explosion site and will never forget 11:11 p.m.
You can see how close we are. No noise, no sound, nothing. Just a warm rush of air, and everything fell.
His eldest daughter managed to escape on her own, but Glenn, his wife, and younger daughter were trapped underneath portions of walls and roof. Neighbors who heard the screams for help pulled them out.
What if the guy, you know, the neighbors that came in and got us out, what I'd say would have been 3-4 minutes later. We were told by the fire department that just because of the damage to the house, they wouldn't even come in.
Their home burst into flames moments after their rescue.
This is something that we went through with as a family, and God willing, no other families will go through it.
The Olveys lean on humor to heal. When asked if the family was moving back, Glenn said yes, while referring to the movie The World According to Garp, in which Robin Williams' character buys a house, even though it had been hit by a plane.
Honey, the chances of another plane hitting this house are astronomical. See, it's been pre-disastered. We're gonna be safe here.
Glenn believes the odds are in favor of him rebuilding a new home on the old location.
What's the odds of this happening again? And I think the next step is actually getting everybody out of the car and getting them on the lot. Once they get on the lot, they realize it's not going to happen again. And that's going to be the hardest part.
The family was able to salvage some keepsakes from the rubble, like the American flag belonging to Glenn's dad, a World War II veteran. That makes him smile, as does his time behind home plate.
Out.
Here, he feels at peace.
No ball. 2 strike. Ball. Hut. Hut. This is back to being my second home. Eventually we'll get to our first home, but right now this is my second home.
The Olvies hope to start building their home in the spring. On this block, Michelle Smith found she was never alone, especially when she faced not just one, but 2 battles. Michelle Smith is moved by the music. Whether playing hymns at church or practicing at home. Her century-old instrument is the one thing she wanted to save when the house across the street exploded.
I was convinced that I wasn't going to leave the house until I could board up the windows, because my piano's in the front room and that's kind of my prized possession, and I didn't want the weather to get to the piano.
She saved it and worked on fixing her home. There was a lot of work to do. By January, another punch in the gut.
It sure brings your own mortality into play.
She was diagnosed with breast cancer. Her weapons, radiation, and support from cancer survivors in Richmond Hill.
They gave me hope.
She was also motivated by this photograph, taken days after the blast, and the words whispered by her daughter.
She just put her arm around me and she said, "Mom, we've got this. We're going to do this. God's got this. We're going to be okay."
Or did you say cancer one thing, explosion another thing?
No, they were intertwined because I was so in the trenches with them both at the same time.
So 2 wars.
2 wars. 2 wars being fought at the same time.
You beat both.
I did. Thank you, Lord.
In August, Michelle was able to claim victory over her cancer.
So I think I look at things a little bit differently now. I'm more people-focused and more relationship-focused.
So much so, she made sure her rebuilt home had a bigger porch to let more neighbors sit and chat.
I wonder if it's another community.
She never gave up on people or her piano. And now a fun Call 6 investigator surprise that had Richmond Hill families grabbing their phones to capture the moment. These cosmic characters drew a following as they headed to visit a 9-year-old boy. Every day, the boy asks his parents, Ryan and Sabrina Konecki, about returning to Richmond Hill. It's been tough to explain to him why his house was destroyed in that blast, and just as bad, why their new home builder stopped construction. To cheer him up, we called on members of Star Wars Indiana. 9-year-old Logan was in for a surprise.
Logan, come to the front door. Come upstairs. Who's that, Logan?
Lord Vader! Come in, my sis. We shall destroy the galaxy. I am Luke Skywalker.
Then I am your father.
Now we shall rule the galaxy. As father and son.
Yes.
You are no longer my father. He is my father now.
In the end, Logan decided to stay with his real parents. Logan enjoyed the people in the cool costumes. For him, it was an out-of-this-world experience.
Look, they're going back to the Death Star.
You think?
Yeah.
Looking up and forward, our key to the road to recovery here in Richmond Hill.